Many people are afraid to enjoy their life. Enjoyment of life is considered a major sin. You are thinking, therefore you are changing. You are thinking, therefore you are transforming. You are thinking, therefore you are initiating change. That's the key of free thinking. What I want to suggest is that no tradition of language, of faith, of belief, or way of worship, of way of upbringing, way of your views on sexuality, way of your views about what should be the social order, what should be the economy, what should be the political system, who should rule you, and what kind of belief system there should be there. You have your own choice and chase it. And if anybody says that, well, somebody else thinks for you and you have to just follow it, reject it. Freedom shall be the only religion, and freedom shall be the only way of thinking, and freedom shall be the only criterion, and freedom shall be the only guiding force that takes you forward. It's freedom, freedom, and freedom. Welcome to this Sunday meeting that we have started some 2 years back and going uninterruptedly for a long time now. So today, as we planned, we would be discussing about freedom. We have been discussing about freedom, the various aspects of freedom many times. But what's the real gateway of freedom is what we are going to discuss today. Many people would say that they are free thinkers. That's a term which is very popular for the last 2 centuries now. A lot of people would call themselves as free thinkers who are ready to think without any fear of consequences, and fear of tyranny, fear of being harassed, fear of being persecuted. This was not possible earlier. 2 centuries back, thinking freely and expressing your views freely probably would land you up in a jail, or land you up in a gallows, or land you up in a torture chamber. That has changed. If you thought, if you spoke against the political authority, that was not tolerated. If you publicly spoke about the belief that you have been brought up, that was not accepted. So now all over the world practically, the idea of freedom and free thought has gone so deep. After the French Revolution, the idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity has come. And liberty primarily is the liberty to speak out, to express what you want to say, to express your conscience, and follow, chase your conscience. That is what freedom that we understood now. But going further into that, there are many elements of freedom that we have to understand very carefully. You know, one of the foundations of modern freedom, the idea of freedom, comes from, or it's stabilized in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. A lot of freedom are systematically explained there. But beyond that, the modern idea of freedom has gone several new dimensions, and it's growing further. And let's go one by one onto that. The primary freedom that anybody should have is the freedom to think. That's the key of free thought. Think about what? Think about anything. Anything in the whole world one can think about, and you don't have to be afraid about that. That's the fundamental idea of freedom of thought. You can initiate things, you can think of things, you can fantasize things, you can imagine things, you can think of new machineries, you can think of new ways of life, you can think of new political systems, you can think of new economic system, different ways of social life, you can think of living in some other countries, you can think of marrying somebody you like, or you can think of not marrying but still living with somebody else. You can think about anything in the whole world, including your childhood faith, including the political system, anything. Any single thing in the whole world you can think about. You don't have to be afraid about anything to think. Absolutely nothing to fear about that. Nothing is a taboo in your thought. Anything that you have been following, if you have the courage to think, you can think, was it good? Was it correct? Or was it just a tradition that you've been following without any questioning? The moment you have a fundamental idea that whatever you believed or followed or practiced or became part of your life was not correct, if you can reason out why it is not correct, that's the moment you realize that you can understand things beyond your traditions, beyond your experiences in the past, and beyond what has been taught to you. You can think. You can think courageously, and you can think without any fear. So primarily, the fear that you have is the key that stops you from doing anything. The fear that you have to think about any tradition, any kind of old values, any kind of, political system that you are in, that moment you are liberating yourself. You are thinking, therefore you are changing. You are thinking, therefore you are transforming. You are thinking, therefore you are initiating change. That's the key of free thinking. Free thinking was not possible earlier. Your religions never allowed it. Your political systems never allowed it. Your societies never allowed it. Your countries never allowed it. Your families never allowed it. But you have to break all these barriers of controlling forces, all these barriers created by your families, your traditions, your religion, your society, your town, your city, your country, your whole world. And you can break the chains of all taboos and think and think and think forward. That's free thinking. And the moment you start thinking, one of the primary things that come as an obstacle is your faith. That is why free thinking is always connected with rejecting the traditional faith. Those people who thought that the faith that they have been brought up perhaps was not really acceptable. Many of the things that you have been told were absurd, bound by tradition, and there is no base for that. It's all superstition, and it's mainly fantasies and mythology. That's where the authorities of religion got completely crazy. They made gallows. They made your burning stakes. They made everything possible for you to stop thinking. And the political authorities of those times, when thought started coming out so clearly, without any fear, the political authorities, those were connected with the religious structures, and the religious structures, those who are connected with the political structures, they joined together to oppress people, to suppress them, and to stop them, to break their freedom. And you have seen over centuries, a lot of people who struggled to come out with their freedom, the idea of freedom, were tortured. There were factories producing torture machines, not only in countries, but also under the leadership of religion. The Catholic Church has been officially producing torture equipments, which you can see in exhibitions in Norway or in Tallinn or in many other parts of the world. You can see photographs of them everywhere. They had very clear, if you wrote against the traditional faith, there were equipments to crush your fingers or break your legs. And if you spoke out against the traditional faith, there were equipments to pluck out your tongue, to kill you, execute you. There were so many different ways, but not just killing, but giving you the most painful and horrible death. That's how the the traditional ideas maintained its stay and stopped freedom of thinking. Now we have come out. In most of the world, most of the civilized world, we have come out and we can think about anything. We can think about your religion, you can think about your political authorities, you can think about changes, you can think about transforming societies, and that's all possible now. But that's not enough. That's what I wanted to say. What are the fundamental freedoms that we require? Once you start thinking freely, once you start expressing your views out of your thought, you have the next stage that asks you to express what you found correct, to express what you found wrong, to express what you felt you have to reject, and to express what you found you don't have to accept. And once you start expressing in different ways, by writing, in fiction, in movies, in songs, in whatever creative ways that you can, you have started expressing it. Then you see the next stage of suppression. The freedom of expression as an idea was not encouraged, but clearly discouraged by political systems, even the democratic political systems anywhere. So we have to write as a fundamental right, not only in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or also in the constitutions of many countries, including that of United States and that of India, that free expression is as important as thought. Also, I would say that the freedom of expression and freedom of thought would start from freedom of conscience. You understand things. You have a different thought. You have a different perspective than what is taught from your childhood. Your childhood was full of a lot of fantastic stories given to you. You had no option but to believe. You are vulnerable and you have been still believing. There was no way to think about a different option in your life. The most vulnerable age that you all, or we all have been, sometime before the 10th year, you were already fed with a lot of stories and fantasies and faith and mythology by that time. A lot of values that are not necessary. A lot of traditions that were absurd. A lot of superstitions which could be easily debunked. You were simply told all these things and you were asked to follow all of them. Now you grow up. You grow up from all these traditions and you start thinking and you start understanding things differently and you start expressing and you have a conscience now. You know that certain things are right and you feel and you're convinced that it is right. And that's where your conscience is formulated. Once you have your conscience, once you are correct in your observation, you should be able to practice, or you should be able to practice your life on the basis of the conscience that you have. You may be perhaps brought up in a Christian family. You may be brought up in a Hindu family or a Muslim family or a Parsi family or any other family. But once you think that this is not what I want, I understood it differently now, I want to walk out of it. That's where your conscience has an important role to play. You have the freedom to walk out. You can chase your conscience. You can follow your conscience. And freedom of conscience is one of the fundamental freedoms that every single individual in the whole world has to have and should have. Freedom of conscience. And the right to follow your conscience is so important. If you feel something is right, if you feel a certain way of life is the most valuable thing for you, if that's the core value of you, whatever it is, let it be even a religious faith, you should have the freedom to follow it. I'm an atheist. I'm not asking everybody to be an atheist to become a free thinker. If you are born in a Christian family and tomorrow if you feel that you have a different faith now, that's Parsi religion, and you want to follow it, go and chase it, do it. Have that freedom. Use that freedom. If you want to go to another religion, yes. If you are sure about what you want, Do it. Change it. Decide what you want and follow it. You should have the freedom to do it. Any kind of faith that you want to have, you should have the freedom to follow it. Any kind of ideas you want to follow, you should have the freedom to follow it. If you have the idea to be out of all these faiths and to live as an independent person without the fear of any gods or demons or spirits, and well, you must be, it must be possible for you to live without any gods and religion and any other kind of oppressive imaginations. So freedom is a question of your choice, and choice is coming out of your freedom. So the fundamental idea of freedom is a call to follow your conscience and follow your conscience the way you want it. And that's the core value of human freedom. I would always say that anybody, any single person in the whole world want to have any kind of faith, let it be following superstitions. People should have the freedom to follow whatever they think right. No one in the whole world has the right to oppress anybody or suppress any idea or suppress any person because of the conscience that they have. If anybody is suppressed due to a certain position that the person has, that's not a free society. So freedom of expression and freedom of conscience comes very important in a civilized society. And don't be afraid about any modern society where even rationalists have full say. In such a society, absolute freedom of anybody to follow whatever they want, whatever faith they want, whatever belief they want, whatever way of worship they want, unless it is against the public order, everyone should have the right to follow whatever they want. And whatever practice they want to, have in their life, whatever faith they want to follow. I would propose, I would suggest, I would wish people to come to freedom, to come out of all these kind of faiths. But at the end of the day, it's the choice of the individual. It's the person who decides whether he wants any religion, any faith, or any kind of tradition, any kind of idea, or any kind of thought. The freedom is with you. It's in your hand. And you have to decide, not your parents, not your priest, not your traditional books, not your holy book, not your caste, not your community, not your religion, not your state, but you. You are the custodian of your freedom. You are the custodian of your right of expression, and you are the custodian of your conscience. That's the fundamental idea of free thought and rational thought. And rational thought further goes forward towards scientific attitude. But that doesn't mean that the idea of freedom of thought restrains people in practicing or following their conscience. What we demand, what we ask, what we all ask is the right of every single individual to follow whatever they think right. That is freedom of thought. And that is freedom of expression. And that is freedom of conscience. Now, that's not enough. There are more things. Do you have the freedom to eat what you think good for you? You have been told you should not eat a certain kind of food. You have been told because of your tradition, because of your caste, because of your family's tradition, you should not eat non-vegetarian food. And you feel you want it. Can anybody stop you that you should eat a certain, you should not eat a certain food? You know that there are so many communities in different parts of the world. By tradition, by their faith, they would make taboo on your eating. Some people would say, don't eat pork. You go to the Jewish community, you go to the Islamic community, they are not allowed to eat pork. In most of the world, pork is eaten and it's consumed so vehemently. And if you're born in a Jewish family, and if you're born in a Muslim family, and if you have an urge to eat pork, go and eat pork. Nobody should be able to stop you from that. If you are from a Jewish family and if you are from a Muslim family, don't believe that pork is bad. If you have an inner feeling for pork, go and eat pork. It's tasty. But if you want it only. But because of your faith, nobody should be able to stop you from doing that. If some people are eating beef and some people say that it cannot be eaten, of course, many countries have laws about pork and beef and all this kind of, different forms of meat. But I would wish a society where people have the freedom to choose what they want. And nobody is stopped because of their faith or tradition or holy books or your religious community stopping you in trying a different food. If you're born in a Jain family, if you're born in a Brahmin family, you are not generally allowed to eat meat. Come on, if you feel like eating meat, go and try meat. And if you find interesting, eat it. Don't accept this tradition. Don't accept this taboo that is brought upon you. It's not your choice. And if you want it, go and eat meat. And if you find it tasty, if you want to follow it, don't accept your tradition. Don't accept the order of your community. Don't accept the taboo that is given by your family or your caste. But if it's generally eaten as a food and if it's eaten by other people and if you find it good, go and eat it. There are so many people who have gone in Jain families and Brahmin families who tried meat and found it interesting and still eat meat. Come on, you can also try it. Break this taboo and try it. And if you're a Muslim, break this taboo and go and eat pork if you want. And if you're from a Jewish family, try pork if you want. Don't be afraid. You need not be afraid. Freedom to choose your food. And that's your freedom. You have to decide, not your caste, your community, your family, your tradition, your society, your history, whatever it is. But it's your choice. You can eat. And once you understand that you have this freedom, you climb another stage, another level of your freedom. Don't be afraid of any food. Try it. Enjoy it. Look at Gandhi's case. Gandhi was brought up in a family and in a tradition that meat was not eaten. When he was studying in Britain, he thought one should try meat. He had a conflict within him. He thought it could be a sin or it could be very bad. All the same, he wanted meat. He tried it. But of course, the inner conflict got him into a trouble. He started hearing the animal crying in the night from his stomach. It was a psychological phenomenon. So he stopped eating meat, but he tried it. That trying is very important. You have to try it. You have to experience something that is a taboo. And if you want it, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of your tradition. Don't be afraid what is taught to you. And if you like it, if you enjoy it, follow it. That's freedom. And courage to do that is freedom. If you're afraid to do what you want, to eat what you want, and to eat what you wish to eat, that's not freedom. That's a kind of rejection of freedom. But coming more, many people are afraid to enjoy their life. Enjoyment of life is considered a major sin. You are told that you should be an ascetic. You should not eat properly. If you get completely excited with your food, it's a wrong thing. That's what is told to you. If you feel happy listening a certain music, and if your tradition says, no, music is a haram, it should not be followed, reject it. Go and listen music. If somebody says that dancing is bad and you feel like dancing, go and dance. Break the taboo. There is nothing happening. A lot of people are dancing, a lot of people are singing, a lot of people are listening music. And if you want to dress in a special way that you like, and if you think that the society does not like it around you, don't bother about the society. Have your freedom to dress up the way you want, unless it's breaking the public decency. And what's public decency, again, is a question of levels. And if it's, for example, if you want to go around with the shorts, go around with the shorts. And if you want to go around with a mini skirt, go around with a mini skirt. If you want to go around with a pair of jeans, there are many communities in many parts of the world that says to you, do not do it. It's not our tradition. You have to have a special way of dress. Reject it. Reject it. Totally reject it. Dress up the way you want it. And to show the best of you is always good. Every single person would like to be good looking, the way one wants it. If I think that I should have a big moshi, and that's how I would like to present myself to the world, don't be afraid of anybody. Go and grow your moshi. And if somebody thinks that if they have a long beard, that would look nice, don't be afraid of anybody, but do it. If you want to shave your head, and if you think that that's the best that you want, don't be afraid, do it. Any kind of fashion, any kind of way of dressing, any kind of entertainment, if there is a taboo, if there is a religion, if there is a tradition, if there is a family custom, if there is a national custom, just reject it, because it's your freedom to have the best way of living that you have, and the best way of dressing that you desire, and the best way of enjoyment that you should have. If you think you would enjoy dancing, go and dance. If you think you would feel happiness if you swim, and whenever it is possible, go and swim. And if you feel happiness, if you get fulfillment by traveling, and if you can afford it, and if other situations permit, go and travel. If you find happiness in friendship with somebody, and if society says, no, you should not do it because they belong to a different community or caste or religion or different economic status or different gender, reject it. Do what you want. That's freedom. Your freedom is with you. Never forget. Don't follow anyone, any single person, when you want to follow your life or take forward your life the way you want it. Because it's you, only you, who should decide what you want, how to enjoy your life, how to have your entertainment, how to dress, how to eat, what to think, what kind of politics you should have, what kind of economic views you have. It's your right, and nobody else has any kind of authority, any kind of right to dictate you what you should think, what you should dress, what you should wear, what you should eat, how you should entertain yourself. And furthermore, what kind of sexuality you should have. Every single person would open up to sexuality when they are 15 or 16 years old later, or still younger, they have sexual thoughts. And once you develop into an adult, once you are reaching an age of deciding for yourself, whatever is the kind of sexual orientation that you have, don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid of the society or family of tradition or the nation or the surroundings. You have the right, an absolute right, to follow whatever is your orientation, or whatever is your liking, or whatever is your desire, or whatever is your way of enjoying sexuality. Any adult has the full right, an absolute right, to follow their sexual life the way they want it. Nobody has a right to interfere into that. It's not the family that decides. It's not the parents that decide. It's not the society that decides. It's not the community. It's not the religion. It's not the tradition that decides. It's you who decide. If you want to be in a marriage, and if you want to be a monogamous relationship, that's your choice. Well, you have the right, and you should be able to follow that. Nobody should be able to question that, because that's your choice, your decision. And if you want to have multiple partners, if that's what you want, you should have the freedom to do that, provided you are dealing only with consenting adults. And if you think that you should have two partners, well, it's your choice. If the involving parties have full freedom, and if they all are mutually agreeing, it's your freedom and nobody else has a right. So your sexual choices, your sexual decisions are your choices. And it should not be dictated by the society. It should not be dictated by your tradition. It should not be dictated by your family or your societies. A lot of people are opting for monogamous relationships because it's more comfortable, it's more efficient in practically managing in the contemporary society. And if anybody wants a monogamous relationship, means one person, two partners together, and they're bringing up children. That's what is monogamous relationship. If that's comfortable for you, just do it, follow it. And somebody says that no, freedom of sexuality means multiple partners. But if you feel like you want to be monogamous person, and nobody else should be able to influence you, and you should be able to follow it and practice it the way you want it. You know about tribes like some Santal tribes have a problem. They don't allow people to be monogamous. Everybody has to be with everybody before finally deciding who should be your partner. Such societies are stopping your freedom to be with one person. That is also not allowed in a modern society. If you want a single partner, it should be your right. Nobody else has a right to interfere into that. If you want multiple partners, it's your choice. Nobody else has to interfere into that. If you don't want any kind of relationship, well, that's also your choice. If you're asexual, that's also your choice. Nobody should be able to interfere into that. What I want to say is that your sexuality is your right. Your sexual orientation is something you have to chase and decide and follow. It's not others who should decide about it. If you feel that you are heterosexual, if you realize that you are just heterosexual, male-female relationship, go and follow it. Don't get influenced by any other ideas. If that is what you want, you should follow it without any fear, without anybody telling that, no, people have different orientations. But if you want a heterosexual, monogamous family, go and follow and do it. But don't come into the life of other people who may want a different way of life. Some people may be homosexual, gay or lesbian. Well, that's their orientation. You have no business to interfere into their life. Some people may be bisexual. They may have attraction to the same sex as well as with an opposite sex. Well, so long as if you're monogamous and if you're following a single partner life and nobody should be interfering into that, you have also no right to interfere into their life. Every single individual should have the right and freedom and dignity to follow whatever they want in their sexual life. That is what is sexual freedom. Sexual freedom is not sexual anarchy. It's the decision, it's the acceptance of a society, acceptance of a general community, acceptance of a social order where people, consenting adults, can decide for themselves about their sexuality. Whether they want monogamy, yes, it's their choice and they can follow it. If they want multiple partners, yes, it's their choice and they can select it. If they feel that their orientation is different, yes, it's their freedom and they can follow it. And whatever way they want, it's none of other people's business to interfere, not of the religion, not of the state, not of the society, not of the caste, not of the tradition, not of any kind of social order. You should not accept any arbitrary assumption of authority to chase your sexual desires and the way you want it. And have the courage. Don't be afraid. Never be afraid, because these are the areas where many people are afraid. Freedom is your birthright. It's your fundamental right. Nobody has the right to question it. Absolutely nobody has the right to question it. Now, but that's not enough. You should have other freedoms also. Every single individual has the right to be free from hunger. Freedom from hunger. You know that food is produced abundantly in this world. At one time of our ancient history, we need not have to produce things. things where we were pickers and gatherers and hunters, and we had enough. When the population grew up, we understood that we have to produce food, and we have to grow animals, and we have to grow poultry to produce our food. But with all this modern development of seeds, of agriculture, the great agricultural revolution that we had, the great revolution that we had regarding milk production, the great revolution that we had regarding the meat production, a lot of people all around are in hunger. Look at the African scenario. Hunger and malnutrition is spread all around the African continent. Not because they are not producing, not because they have enough production. There is no warehousing. There is no transportation. There is no way of distribution of food materials. And we have developed political systems. We have developed international organizations. We have developed so many different patterns of nations and systems. But still, there are a lot of people who are hungry and malnutritious. Every single individual, no matter where they are born, no matter what situations they are coming from, they have the right, they have the absolute right to be free from hunger and to have a life without malnutrition, a childhood without malnutrition, to grow up without any fear of food or water or the basic necessities. And why our societies, which developed all through these centuries, developed wonderful political systems, wonderful economies, are not guaranteeing the freedom from hunger. That's one of the basic freedoms that we have to pursue and chase and insist upon. We have to see political systems providing options for us to have freedom from hunger for every single citizen, every single person in this world. So that's one of the key freedoms that we should have. And the freedom from wants. People want shelter. Every single individual has the right to have his own or her own shelter, a place to sleep. So the basic amenities, freedom from hunger, freedom from lack of sleeping facilities or dwelling. These are the fundamental freedoms that are to be guaranteed in any given society. So we have to see that political systems are forced to make it possible that nobody is in want of food, in want of a dwelling place. That's also a fundamental freedom. When we understand what is freedom, you would not be able to think properly if you're hungry. Your body growth and your intelligence growth would not be proper if you're malnutritious. So there should be a system, there should be a provision that these basic things are available to every single person. That's also an important freedom that we have to guarantee. So there are still more things. Every single individual has a right to have freedom from ignorance. You are told absurd things. You are made to believe superstitions. You are forced to follow traditions that has no meanings. You are asked to follow rituals that are simply absurd just some traditions. If you find any tradition not acceptable, reject it. If modern knowledge is denied to you, you should be able to break that. If any book, any teacher, any community, any faith tells you that you should not further pursue knowledge, reject it and chase knowledge, chase information, and try to analyze it, disseminate it, and get into your conclusions. If any idea stops you, come out from ignorance, question it. If you are a Muslim woman in Afghanistan, and if you're not given an opportunity to come out of ignorance, if you're forced to follow a certain system which rejects you to question things, make a situation that you are able to question it, reject it, question it. And most of us probably came through all these situations where your freedoms were rejected. So when you are an adult, when you know things, when you understand the value of freedom, when you understand what is the key of freedom, all what you can do is two levels. For your next generation, guarantee that they are growing in freedom. And anywhere you can personally influence for your younger brother or sister, or your, neighborhoods where you can influence, try to help people to come out of all kind of oppressions and promote them to come to freedom. And create a new situation that you reject whatever you don't want and accept the path of freedom. And once you are over it, once you come out of it and you are breathing a new air, maybe you are brought up like that, you cannot help it. But the moment you realize it, break all chains, come to freedom, freedom from ignorance, freedom from traditions, freedom from baseless values, freedom from all kind of arbitrary assumption of authority, freedom from your traditional beliefs, freedom from your old religions, freedom from your gods or demons or spirits, whatever you have upon your head. If you want to change your religion, go and change your religion. If you want to reject a religion, go and reject your religion. If you want to come out of a religion, come out of the religion. And if you want to, freedom of mobility is another thing. If you want to go to some other place to live, go and live at the place where you want to. Because it's also a fundamental freedom, freedom to live wherever one wants. Earlier times, people were not allowed to cross a river or cross a sea. That was considered a big sin. Those who broke those traditions made changes. Nowadays, people don't speak about that. Still, there are people who would say that don't go out of the country, don't go out of the state. And if you feel like you want to do that, just do it. Go to the places where you feel comfortable. Go to the places where you feel you have free air. If you are in a village and if you're happy, live there. But if you feel like you want to go to a town, go and live in the town. And even the languages are forced upon people. And most of the people study in their languages, but if you want to study a different language, if you want to take another language as your major language, go and do it. What I want to suggest is that no tradition of language, of faith, of belief, or way of worship, of way of upbringing, way of your views on sexuality, way of your views about what should be the social order, what should be the economy, what should be the political system, who should rule you, and what kind of belief system there should be there. You have your own choice and chase it. And if anybody says that, well, somebody else thinks for you and you have to just follow it, reject it. If anybody says, even if I say, follow me, reject it. Don't follow me. Don't consider me as the final authority of anything. What all I suggest is go and question things. Question even what I say. If you're convinced only, you should accept anything. If you are absolutely sure that the position that you reach is acceptable to you, then only accept it. Don't follow any holy book. Don't follow any guru. Don't follow any master. Don't follow any faith. Don't follow any tradition. Follow your conscience. And your conscience shall be guided with the highest value system that humans have developed about respecting other people's right to have their own conscience. That's the key. If you have that conscience, if you have that right, understand that others also have the same right. Others also have the same conscience. There should be ideas and ideas and ideas coming up in this world. If many people speak about a big marketplace where any product can be sold, I would say that it should be a big marketplace of ideas. Anybody should be able to sell any idea in this big marketplace of ideas, and nobody should be allowed to stop it. Freedom shall be the only religion, and freedom shall be the only way of thinking, and freedom shall be the only criterion, and freedom shall be the only guiding force that takes you forward. It's freedom, freedom, and freedom. That's what I have to say today. And now we open up a little early for the questions, because I would like the questions would bring up more to this subject. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I think after this wonderful session, let's move on to the question answers now. So click on the hand raise tool icon as usual for asking. Try to stick with one question, one person, and be as to the point as you can with your question. So I think let's move on to the questions now. We have Shraddhanshu Shekhar with us. I would ask you to ask your question.
My question is how can one have that courage of freedom? When you were talking that you are custodians of your freedom, you are custodians of your decisions, but because our mind is already captured or already trained by society, religion, so we are already trained, our mind is already formed like that, we cannot go to think, right? So how can one get that courage to break these limitations? And second question is also there are some limitations of financial limitations. So that is also can we see as a border which cut off freedom? Thank you.
Shraddhanshu, that's the primary question. Yes, in our societies, people don't have the right to think, and people cannot easily come out because they are bound by a lot of things, traditions, families, societies, everything is binding them. But now, once you have the freedom of thinking and you start thinking about things, and you should speak it out. And once you speak out, then you should be able to articulate and understand what you want exactly. Form up your shape, form up your ideas, form up your patterns. And once you are in a position to decide for yourself, you must be growing in a family. Your parents are deciding. You must be growing in a group, in a joint family where the whole people have a say on that. You must be growing, for example, in a caste system where the caste authorities have an influence. If anything that stops you from having a conscience, walk out of it. Move over it. Have the courage for that. I don't say that you have to break relation with your parents, but you should be able to make the fine differences of loving your parents and caring your parents and deciding for yourself, not following what the parents say. And you should be able to take the fine difference between keeping the fine relation with your societies, but insisting that, well, I have a different opinion and I have a different conscience. I am for it. Therefore, one of the first things that you require is to have self-sufficiency. You should be able to stand on yourself. That's also a major freedom. To be able to stand on your legs, to be able to be of yourself. You should be able to have your way of living possible, and that needs a prerequisite of your income, your economic self-standing. Many times, you cannot decide when your parents are feeding you, and you are growing in your families. But then at that time, think and grow. And when it was not your choice. Whatever faith or belief or worship or ideas or value system that were imposed upon you were not your contribution, that was given to you by other people. But understand it, grow, and reach a situation that you can decide for yourself. The moment you reach a situation that you can decide for yourself, start implementing it. I don't say that, you have to jeopardize your personal life or security or anything, but wait for the time that you can decide for yourself. And as soon as you can decide for yourself, just do it. That's what I would suggest.
Okay. So I think we can move on to the next one now. We have Kunjatur Chandrahasa with us. Please proceed with the question.
My question is, in the world, in the different countries, especially in some of the countries, the politics and the religion both are mixed. In such a situation, does it not come in the way of individual freedom for those people who live there, for the citizens? They cannot have their freedom to the fullest extent. For example, today it may be the extreme case of Afghanistan, but there are other countries also where the government, if it supports the religion and it is bound by that religion, it tries to enforce it on the citizens. Is it not a harmful situation? Does it not impinge on the freedom of the individual? This is my question.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. For example, if your political system is not allowing you and forcing you to follow a certain thing, you are denied that freedom. Sometimes you are, see, when you have a freedom, the idea of freedom is those people who can actually use it. If you are in a prison, you cannot have any freedom. And if you are in Afghanistan now, you are in a prison. It's a political prison. You cannot come out of it. The only thing that you can do is, if you are in a prison like that, you have to try to change it. That's the only way you can fight about it. But if you are in North Korea, what kind of political freedom you have? You don't have that political freedom. All what you can do is probably try to come out of it if you cannot change it. I mean, of course, there are limitations of people who are in traditions. When I call for this, I'm calling upon all those people who can afford to do things, who can do things. And if others are not able to do things, think what we can do to help them also to get that opportunity to come out. If there is a possibility that's happening in Afghanistan, that things are changing there, support it politically or otherwise. If there are situations like in Iran where people cannot come out of it, and if there are ways to help those people out, well, try to do that. But in your life, when it is possible, for all those people that where it is really, really possible without jeopardizing your life or your basic survival, then only you will be able to do it. Others are in prison, sometimes in political prison, sometimes in family prison. And of course, I mean, when we speak about freedom, we have to understand that there are a lot of people still imprisoned in certain situations. All what we can do is we can try to get our freedom for those people who can afford it and help others to the extent possible to come out. When the whole world has a situation where people have the freedom to choose their life, that's the ideal situation. That's not there at this moment. That's why we are proposing this idea that for all those people who can afford it, who can do it possibly, just do it. For other people, we try to help them. We try to create public opinion. I mean, it's a sad situation that a lot of people don't have even this choice because they are politically imprisoned. They are in situations where they cannot come out. If you are in Iran, if you are in Afghanistan, if you are in North Korea, you cannot come out easily. So it's a sad situation, but these are possible only when ground realities come in your favor. Otherwise, you can only do things that might change those situations. But in your life, if it's possible for you, just do it. I understand your position, and that limitation is certainly understood. Thank you.
A country like Bangladesh, a rationalist cannot express very freely, and how the persecution 2 years back happened. He was killed. The person who came from USA. Such things, even a country like Bangladesh, which is relatively in an advanced the form of freedom they are expressing, but there also such things actually they are hampering the freedom in that way. I agree with you that a person in such a situation, he has to toe the line, or he has to gather the opinion of the people to come out of such situations. Thank you, Sanal.
Even in animals, sometimes use strategies. If you chase a rabbit, and if you reach very close to it, and if the predator is going to kill it, you know what the rabbit would do? It would simply lie down as if it's dead. It simply lie down as if it's dead. It's not dead. It can pretend. That's an instinct of survival. you pretend that you are not responding, you are not running. So normally the predator needs somebody to run. And once the predator is uninterested and looking the other side, suddenly it stands up and runs. So in many countries, people don't have the opportunity. In many families, where if there are oppressive parents, you cannot do that. But wait for the time when you start earning. Then you can decide for you. And wait for the time when your political situations change, or try to change the political situation. Sometimes people fight for change in the political situations in this way. In Bangladesh, for example, when Ajoy Roy was killed, butchered in the streets, and following that, I mean, how many people have been killed? 22 people. Most of them were very articulate people, brilliant speakers and brilliant careerists. I mean, they were simply butchered by the Muslim extremists just because they have been promoting science. You know what happened? In the streets, there have been demonstrations in support of all these people. 1 million people in the streets of Dhaka demonstrated in their support and demanded the arrest of all these people behind it. And it has happened. Now officially there are no killings of rationalists or atheists in Bangladesh because the public uprising was so powerful. That is something we can do. Because the pursuit for freedom is not only a personal decision, sometimes it can be a public opinion raising, a public movement which would create a situation that you have that freedom. Sometimes political systems have to go. Sometimes governments have to change. Sometimes things have to alter totally. That is also important in pursuit of freedom.
Sanal, one more point I want to just highlight. In India, the of late the sad thing happening is a lot of honor killing. That is, a girl chooses a boy, and the parents, even the parents, father or brother, they would kill the girl. And our society has degenerated to that extent. That is very, very disappointing. You have to say anything on that?
Yes, absolutely. But it's not only now. It has been happening for several decades now. At least for something like 70, 80 years, these honor killings have been coming up very much openly. I mean, in certain communities, if you marry across a religion, if you have a paramour, a lover outside the religion, and then that's not tolerated. Across the caste, it's not tolerated. Sometimes both the parents and their communities decide to kill them, drown them. I mean, most of the times the Rajputs used to drown their girls if they wanted to marry somebody else. For example, there are communities, honor killings happened in such a way that, sometimes the communities decided that they cannot live together, but they decided to run away and live in another city. After 2 or 3 years, their own brothers, their own uncles, their own even parents come and request that, well, everything is forgotten, come back to our place. The moment they are back, immediately there is a community meeting and you are tied up and you are tried and you are hanged or beheaded or drowned. So this is happening. There are on average some 200 honor killings happening in India, but not only in India, different parts of South Asia, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and all these places, honor killings are happening because parents think or families think they have the authority and they have to think for you and they have to decide your future. And we have to bring a public awareness that it's not the parents. Children are not the property of the parents. I mean, they have been instrumental in giving their life, but they cannot decide who they should live with. It's none of their business. They have to accept it. And if they have a problem, they can keep off. But it's the right of the individual with whom they should live with. It's the right of the individual with whom they should find their partner. It can be from a different religion. It can be from a different caste. It can be from a different nation. It can be from a different economic status. It can be from a different age group. It can be, anything. But it's their choice. And that has to be accepted and respected by the society. And if societies don't accept, there should be laws against it. There should be strict action against it. And the society has to clamp upon them so that it's guaranteed. That's our right. That's everyone's right. I understand. I fully appreciate the point that you are raising, Kunjatur, but yes, we have to address it. We have to respond to it and we have to change it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
you.
Okay. So now we have Sibin with us.
Sir, I have one question answered. Sir, you said everybody have the freedom to choose their faith or atheism. But many people in the faith, like even I was in the faith before. Now I'm not in. I'm an atheist. So the people in a certain religious group doesn't know that they are oppressed. So how can we allow, like how can we tell them you can do whatever you want, but we know that they are being oppressed? So how to handle this particular issue, sir?
Those people like you who know that you were suppressed, and when you came out, I'm sure your family would have opposed it, and you probably faced a lot of consequences and opposition from your family members. In most cases, that is there, but you decided to address it, and you decided that you wanted the freedom no matter what others would feel. But what you want to create an awareness in the society, that is the most important thing. And a public awareness building is most important to get people understand that every single individual, when they grow up, they can decide what they want. No matter whatever they decide, if they're an adult, it's their right to chase their life. It's their decision to follow what they want. It's their decision to what life they have. Nobody else has a right, not parents, not family, not community, not caste, not the society around you. So you have to build up this public opinion. Of course, legally it's possible. Legally it's fully allowed. But the community, the family, the society around you don't allow it. That's why one of the best ways to handle is making people aware that it is possible. This awareness campaign should reach out people who are suppressed. Number two, for those people who want to come out and cannot find the way, and if they are too much suppressed, there should be legal support available to them so that they are not cornered too much. We are building up a national legal support organization to address these kind of problems, and this is getting built up now, and already there are a dozen lawyers already in communication. We are making a national legal support team to help people to come out from the traditional situation if they are pressed against the law. Legally, it's the right of every individual to chase the life that the person wants. Whether leave the religion or follow the religion, reject the religion, go to another religion, go to atheism, or whatever they want, it's their freedom. And that's to be guaranteed. Or regarding marriage or living with somebody, it's their right. And intercaste marriages and interreligious marriages are opposed by many communities, but legally they are supported. Legally, even when it comes to a court of law, it will be allowed. It's only the tradition and families and the panchayats that would stop them. But in such cases, there should be legal support available to people, and there should be other moral support also available to people, and that should be built up. That's why we should have such organizations of lawyers and other people who are supporting this to be in support. Even that's what we are building up now. Thank you. That's an important question. Yes.
Okay, and now we have Rasi with us.
Hi, Sanal sir. Sir, I have a question. Sir, as you said about the freedom to think and do anything, I have a question related to the sexual orientation. That you said no homosexual person can engage in what he wishes to do, right? So that means he can marry a woman, and the same time he can engage with sexual homosexual relationship. But I'm doubtful that how it will affect his family, or to what extent this is possible in a country like India, where people try to save their life. Try to save their culture. Thank you.
Yeah, the whole question there is very simple. If a person has identified his sexual orientation as a homosexual, it's wrong that he marries a person of the different, from an opposite sex, because that's not correct. That's not fair to himself also. If a man understands that he is homosexual, and if he marries a woman, that's not correct. How is it possible? How will it work? And if he realizes later, both of them should discuss about it, and both of them should be able to separate themselves and chase their orientation. There is nothing wrong in that. Some people may realize it later only. If somebody, if for example, a lady marries and later she realizes that she's a lesbian, what can she do? She would not find her happiness in the marriage, and she should discuss with her spouse, and they should make a mutual arrangement, and she should be able to go out of it and find a lesbian partner. So simple like that. If one is a bisexual, if one is in a marriage, one should discuss such a problem with the spouse, with a partner, and find a solution that, such an orientation is how to practically handle it. I would say that, many people would realize such things later only, because especially in India or countries where sexuality is not exposed to people before the marriage, they are not exposed to sexuality before the marriage, they may not understand, what they exactly want in an early stage of their life. But if it's realized later, and they should be able to talk to the spouse, meantime they would be living with their spouse and understanding as an individual, and they would be having a way of communicating each other and express it. And instead of feeling bad, understand and have kindness and help the person to come out of it. Both of them need advice and help in such a situation. And that's to be addressed. Such things can happen. Is that...
Okay, so I think we can move on to the next one now. We have another Zoom user with us.
Good evening, Mr. Sanal. You made another wonderful speech. Is freedom is free. If so, the human genome believed to be started from South Africa. They due to their melanin content, they are still black color, but they are very, very strong. Their gene is outstanding. But affluent community of white community, very well educated, still consider them not equal, not freedom. Everybody saw all over the world that Mr. George Floyd was murdered brutally by the use of brutality from police service, and they are imprisoned now, they are in jail. What is your thought on it? Is freedom is free and freedom is exercised? If this is the affluent community in a well-known democratic number one established constitution in the planet Earth, what's your expression? What is your thought on this? Thank you.
If you're speaking about United States and the case of George Floyd, that's a different situation that exists in United States. It's not, the color is not connected with affluency. That's number one. If you take the whole world, many poor countries have, fair-skinned people. The most poor countries in the world, in the pre-First World War times, were in Europe. And even now, if you take, many of the Arab countries, they have not, fair color. They have color pigments strongly. But if you take, some of the old Eastern European countries, there is much poverty. And what was the living standard in Britain? Before the First World War, for the average people, most of the people in Europe were living in hunger and poverty and in malnutrition. And it's not the color that decided what kind of a living standard that they had. They had empires. They have been defeating continents. But back there in these countries, in the villages, people were living in poverty, struggling for their basic food material. In Africa, whereas the whole situation, in many European countries, the basic problem was they cannot even cultivate properly in cold times. So they were mainly hunters or fishers. They could not really produce food in difficult times. There are many countries where people have been struggling for their basic food. It all changed because of the geographical discoveries, and we have new products and new kind of food materials coming across the world. But United States has a different situation. The situation is that the Black community were originally slaves. Slavery was the key of the oppression. The racial discrimination, as it happened in South Africa, for example, was not the way it came in United States. It was because these Blacks have been slaves. They were caught somewhere and brought here and worked against whipping them. And their children were shown to in alligator hunting. They were baits. And that's the way they were living. And from there, it was a long time that they struggled and came out. Still, whatever affirmative action in United States that has been implemented upon, still there is enormous discrimination against the Black community, which is a well-known fact. So the the affluence in Western, especially in United States, of the native, or the white migrants and the erstwhile the slaves who are the African Americans, they've been a wrong beginning in the history of their lives. They were coming from oppressed situation and they are trying to come out. There's still many of them are in superstitions. Most of the faith healing communities are full of people from the American Black community, mainly because you are suppressed, you are ignorant, you have a lot of social problems, you are vulnerable to a lot of superstitions and blind faiths. So on the other side, what is good and bad and what is considered beauty is also very different. I've recently talked with an Arab lady who spoke that in Finland, and she was looking for an Arab man in her life. I said, why didn't you find somebody in Finland? She has been studying here. She said, the problem with Finns is, I don't like these fair-colored people. They don't have any color. There is no charm in that. The beauty comes in the dark complexion. See, beauty comes in the color, that there are color pigments there. They were pale people. I don't find anything attractive in a pale man, is what she said. So perspectives are different. Perspectives are very, very different. Some people can find dark color beautiful. Some people can find brown color very beautiful. Some people can find, but it's not the color that decides. The attraction does not come basically from the color of the skin, but there are so many other factors. The kind of smile you have, the way you speak, these are the things. And many people find attraction in their partners, not only in their looks even. There are so many different factors that affects, as we all pass through all these years and we know how the attractions, work on people. It's not the color. Its color is seen, especially in United States, as a matter of superiority because the white migrants were living there for a long time in control of the economy, and they are fairly rich people. And the black migrants were earlier slaves, and they got liberated pretty soon only. Still, they were suppressed. That is why this kind of a huge discrimination exists. When people are coexisting, in different colors, in many other communities, it's not seen like that. So in many communities, the pale European color is not liked very much. It's not color of beauty for many people. It depends on people and their orientation about colors, their taste. So there is discrimination, of course, but it's not only based on color, but racial discrimination, of course, is something that is to be another thing that we have to come out. Any kind of discrimination, that's another freedom. Freedom from any kind of discrimination. Discrimination based on your caste, religion, community, race, your economic standard, or physical inability or disability. If somebody is a child, and if you have or a younger age, and if you think that you cannot take up big things, if somebody is an old person, you think that, he has to be or she has to be discriminated. Any kind of discrimination of age, of race, of communities, of religion, faith, anything of that sort has to be stopped. And freedom from discrimination is another major key of, freedom.
Sir, may I ask you one more thing?
Please.
In my history, what I know, the white people, like British people and Portuguese people started slavery, and even white people killed black people in Rome and took over Rome, and Christianity, Roman where all came. And right now, in my state where I live, Governor passed a law, race shall not be taught in the school. There is case going on and riots going on, and also said abortion is not allowed after 6 weeks of pregnancy. A woman even doesn't know if she's pregnant after 6 weeks of pregnancy. These fights are still going on in this modern world. We are talking about freedom. What's your thought on it? I thought, in my experience, my knowledge, I'm a very small fish, I think white people started slavery in the whole world in the beginning of the history that I know, as little as I know. What's your thought on it?
history speaks differently. My thought does not count very much. History speaks differently. Slavery was first invented and started by the Egyptians nearly 5,000 years back. And they started, they started slavery and they enslaved people, and the whole pyramids were made by slaves. And who were the slaves? They were Arabs. They were white people. The slaves were white people. They caught people from different areas, mainly from Arabia and from the present-day Europe, and they were the slaves who were defeated, and they were bound. In the wars, whomsoever is defeated was taken as a slave. And they made huge wars. And many parts of the present-day white Europe was part of the defeated areas. And from there also they got slaves. And slavery perhaps was begun by the Babylonians also. There was another argument that it could be either by Assyrians or Babylonians, but we see it very clearly with the Egyptians. It's not a new thing. The modern day slavery that we had in United States, which is not more than 250 years, was the latest part of slavery, wherein slaves were caught from different parts in Africa because they were labor required. The whole tubes in America, they were all built up by the slaves. It was their work that built up the wealth of America, and that was to be respected. And slavery has to go in any form. I mean, in the modern form of it. I mean, by racial discrimination, if it exists, of course. I mean, we know that. I mean, there is a discrimination on the basis of color, and exists. And I mean, the blacks are looked down by many communities in the United States, but that has to go. That simply has to go. Freedom from any kind of discrimination is a fundamental freedom, and that has to go. If it's not there, I fully agree that it exists in different parts of the world. I fully agree that it has a deep impact in the United States. Ground reality, accepted. You are in the United States, and I believe what you say, but it has to go. It has to go totally. It has to go at all. I mean, everywhere. Wherever there is discrimination on the basis of race or color or any kind of the origin, that has to go. And freedom from discrimination is an important right. Thank you.
Thank you. This is in my mind every day. When I wake up, I see this news. It hurts me. That's why I asked this question. Thank you.
All these people like you feel hurt. That all contribute. That all makes the change. And that's where changes are coming. Thank you.
Okay, let's take up the last question. I think we have Vijesh Balan with us.
Hello, Sanal sir. I completely agree with whatever you have talked about freedom. I learned a lot from you, and the world should move on the way you have spoken. I think some Scandinavian countries have practicing whatever you said. I think the entire world should move on to this kind of freedom. But at the same time, I have a question that how far can we stretch an individual freedom to? For example, some people have started to say that they should not be addressed as she or he. They should be addressed the way they wanted. For example, them, they, or it is a big spectrum they have created in the biological system of men and women, identifying a system between man and a woman. So how far is this going to work out for the world, work out for a society to function? If individual freedom is given the highest right in these kind of cases? Thank you.
A lot of things are changing in this world. In the last 70, 75 years, we have seen a lot of changes happening. For example, the famous case of Alan Turing, who was chemically castrated because he was a homosexual, who was one of the founders of the modern computing technology. That was in Britain after the First World War. I mean, so that was a crime there. And later the monarch has apologized to the whole world for that mistake. So we have now moved on, and now we know that, I mean, that's only orientation, and people should have the right to practice whatever sexual orientation, I mean, what they follow. So similarly, in the last 10 to 15 years, there is a new identification developed about gender. The gender identification is growing systematically. It's understanding, the new understanding is that people have a wide spectrum of genders. It's not only male and female, and in between somewhere a transgender. But there are something like 24 different patterns as identified now that people have. A man have several elements of on the other side. on his way of thinking, of his, including his sexual orientation. A lot of things are, from the female gender also. So whether a person, some people may be feeling that he's a man by biological structures, but he feels a female within. Some people feel that they are a female, but they feel that they're a man inside. But now the scientific information, scientific positions have improved a lot that we can decide what gender we can have. People who are in one gender nowadays decide to transform the gender. In 50 years back, we have been discussing about this issue that whether one can find a spouse from the same sex, or one have bisexual relationships, all these kind of things, or polyamory relationship, all these kind of things were discussed and debated so heavily, whether people can have non-traditional ways of life or non-traditional ways of sexuality was a question which is still discussed in many parts of the world, which is still a crime in many parts of the world. But in the developed part, it was discussed, and now it's getting almost acceptance. The next question now coming up is about gender. So this policy connected with the gender equality does not only make a gender balance between male and female, but on a wide spectrum, that there are many people who are 60% man, 40% woman, or 75% man, 25% woman, or sexual orientation also has a wide different spectrum, which cannot be defined by conventional ways of things, but the minutest details, if there are a lot of possibilities, and those are to be respected. That's the new idea that is getting currency, and scientifically it's being sanctioned also. Therefore, there is a new opinion emerging all around the world that our language needs a lot of modification. We are speaking about he and she for everything. Can everything be addressed neutral? What difference it makes if one is a male or female? You can make a friend who is a male or female or any other gender without thinking about sexuality, and with thinking of sexuality also. It's your choice. If earlier a man and man would become friends, and people think that, well, that's not sexuality involved. Or a man and woman, if they come closer, if there is no sexuality involved, also people think that, oh, there is something sexual happening. No, nowadays we know that man and woman can be friends without thinking about sexuality, and a man and man can become friends without thinking about sexuality, but a man and man can also become sexual partners, and a woman and women can become sexual partners. A man and woman can become sexual partners. These all possibilities are there, and it's their freedom. That we accept it all around the world, in the developed world. But the next question is, can one change your gender? If you want, you can decide till 15 years you are a male, and then you want to become a female. Can you become? I've been recently shocked by one of my friends, the son of one of my friends. He visited me recently, and I asked, what about your sisters? One sister has a child. He said, yes. I'm an uncle now. One sister has a child. And what about your other sister? He says, she's no more a sister now. She's my brother now. I said, what happened? Oh, it's very simple. 2 years back, she decided to be a man. I knew this girl. 3 years back, I met her. Then she was a girl. Now she's a boy. And she has gone through these hormone injections and all, and transformed into a boy, and living happily. So these kind of things are happening in the modern world now, very normally. And it's a right of the person to be in any gender that a person wants to be. And that's now scientifically possible, and very easily, not very complicated. And there are easy surgeries and easy methods and easy hormone treatment to reach that. So that's happening. Therefore, a new orientation in our language is coming, that there should not be any man or woman in language. Rather, we should mark individuals as individuals, and neutral genders should come to mark people. Toilets are changing. Earlier there were men toilets and female toilets, and many places I know in Europe that there is no division. It's gender neutral toilets. And if a man and man go to a toilet, and if it's normal, what's wrong if a man and woman go to the same toilet and go to two different rooms adjacent to? Nothing is different. Everybody is civilized. When we are becoming more and more civilized in the world, and we are becoming more and more balanced in the world, and more understanding is developing, and things are changing. So that should be naturally seen in our language also, and nothing to be afraid. Things are dramatically changing. It can further change in the coming generations when we are not there. Thank you very much. Thank you, Shubhi. Thank you for everybody who participated. See you next week. Bye-bye.